Welcome to Inside Drug Discovery. This video presents a new drug, Yuviwel, which was recently approved by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. The structure on the screen is not the actual drug substance, but it is the active form of the drug found in patients. This video emphasizes mostly the medicinal chemistry properties of the drug, rather than efficacy of the drug in patients. Yuviwel was approved on February 27, 2026. Yuviwel is approved for increasing linear growth, that is bone growth, in pediatric patients of at least 2 years of age with achondroplasia with open epiphyses. Yuviwel's active pharmaceutical ingredient is navepegritide. We'll talk more about its structure in a later slide. The drug is administered subcutaneously once per week in a dose that varies with patient mass. The sponsor for the NDA is Ascendis Pharma. A link to the prescribing information insert of Yuviwel is shown on this slide as well as in the video description. Achondroplasia is the most common genetic cause of dwarfism. The condition is linked to a mutation in the FGFR3 gene, the fibroblast growth factor receptor 3 gene. Estimates for incidence of achondroplasia vary, but 1 in 20,000 live births seems to be a reasonable approximation. FGFR3 mutation results in decreased linear bone growth. In the specific case of Yuviwel, the drug is only approved if the patient's epiphyses, the bone growth plates, are open or still active. How does Yuviwel work? Yuviwel contains a drug substance that releases a CNP analog. CNP stands for C-type natriuretic peptide. The CNP analog in Yuviwel is a shorter peptide chain than endogenous CNP, but the analog is still functional. The CNP analog inhibits FGFR3, which is constitutively active in its mutant form. Here is the structure of navepegritide, the drug substance in Yuviwel. This image is pulled directly from the prescribing information. I do hope that's okay. The structure is massive and consists of a peptide. This is the CNP analog, N-terminus and C-terminus, a linker, the transcon linker, and a long set of PEG chains. Each PEG chain has between 200 and 250 units. So these things are quite large, and the molecular weight of the whole structure is in the neighborhood of 45,000 grams per mole. Navepegritide is essentially a large prodrug that releases the CNP peptide in vivo as the linker undergoes slow hydrolysis in the patient. The PEG chains stabilize the peptide and minimize clearance of navepegritide before the peptide is released. Peptide drugs are becoming more common. If you are familiar with the GLP-1 agonists for weight loss, these are also peptide drugs. They have a peptide, generally an alpha helix, that binds to the GLP-1 receptor. The peptide is attached to a linker that connects to a lipid with a terminal carboxylic acid. In the GLP-1s, the linker and lipid stay attached to the peptide. The peptide is what first breaks down as the administered drug is cleared. In the case of navepegritide, the linker is designed to be the weak point and cleaves slowly so that the active peptide is released intact. The transcon linker is a proprietary design created by Ascendis Pharma. Here are some of the PK properties pulled from the prescribing information. I do confess I do not completely understand the numbers in this table. What does make sense is the volume of distribution. The VD of navepegritide is minuscule. It's essentially just the plasma. The VD for the peptide is not much greater, but it's at least small enough to get into the interstitial fluid in addition to the plasma. Clearance for navepegritide is very low. and likely limited to the rate of cleavage of the linker, the CNP analog, however, is rapidly cleared. Based on the values for VD and clearance, I do not understand how the half-life of the CNP analog is not far shorter than navepegritide, but it's possible that the half-life reflects the slow formation of CNP from the parent drug. If you have any ideas, please share them in the comments section. Yuviwel has relatively few safety concerns. Under the category of warnings and precautions, Yuviwel does have a risk of low blood pressure. The most common adverse reactions experienced by at least 5% of patients include vomiting, injection site reaction, nausea, and extremity pain. I think it's worth noting that a market competitor for Yuviwel has daily injections, not weekly. I would guess that the weekly injection regimen is an advantage for Yuviwel in the market. That concludes this summary of the NDA approval of Yuviwel, which was announced by the U.S. FDA on February 27th of 2026. Yuviwel contains navepegritide as its active pharmaceutical ingredient. Yuviwel is approved to increase bone growth in patients with achondroplasia. I appreciate your watching to the end of the video. Please give feedback or questions in the comments section. Take care.